Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to Him forever.
We continue our consideration of the first commandment of the Ten Commandments. And let me read it back again, just the short version, that you shall not have strange gods before me. And we went through the basic sins and basic things that come from this commandment, like faith, hope, adoration, prayer, and sacrifice, and the possible sins that we could commit against these things. Well, other things that are sinful and that we can consider when we do the examination of our consciences. Promises and vows. Christ, this was a big thing in the Old Testament, because the whole idea of the testament, a testament is a contract. It is a promise. It is a promise on both sides, on God's side and on the side of the people to whom God promises. Well, God's promise is the same, salvation. This is His will, that to bring everybody to the original state in which He conceived us, in His mind when He created us. So He makes a promise, and the first promise goes back all the way down to the story of creation, when in the first verses of the book of Genesis, we read that God looked upon His creation and He saw that it is good. Can we state the same thing when we look upon His creation around us? Can we say that everything in this creation around us is good? Well, we don't usually take this as a promise, but this is a very comforting promise to us. When God looked on this creation, He saw it good. So when we look at this creation and we don't see it as good as we want it to be, the situations around us, ourselves, so we have to always remember that statement of God, that when He looked at us, He thought us to be good. That is the first testament, and this is the foundation of all of the testaments that God made with the people in the Old Testament or in the New Testament. All these contracts that came about, and there were more than one in the Old Testament, and there is one in the New Testament. All of them, they're founded on this foundation. God looks at us and He thinks us to be good, to be worthy of His salvation, and He works. He doesn't stay there and watch us live. He works constantly through His love to bring us back to salvation. So, Ten Commandments as themselves, they are a binding contract. It was a contract made through Moses with the Jewish people back then, but in that event, in that moment, they represented all of the humanity. Because those Ten Commandments, they represent to us a law given by God, not invented by us or even understood by us. This is why we need to have these lessons and to actually meditate on the Ten Commandments, because we don't really know what they mean. It takes us knowledge and learning, and we have to force ourselves to understand them. But their value is because God gave them to us. And He is the one to know. He is the one to know His creation and the rules by which the creation goes. We are so happy when we discover something. When we discover a new star. When we discover something about the nature around us. A new chemical, a new radio wave device that'll let us communicate or something. This is something we discover. We don't make it. We discover. Well, God made it. So He knows it. When He tells us something, it becomes a testament. It becomes a promise and a vow on God's side. And He doesn't break His vows. Well, because of this, do we make any promises and vows? Actually, we do. And we did. the greatest of all vows that we took when we were just born, at the moment of our baptism, and that was the promise to renounce Satan. It was recited by, for those who were baptized when they were little, in that promise, our godparents, for us, they rejected Satan and all his works and all his powers and all his angels, trusting in the Lord and putting their faith in the Lord, that we will carry that promise through our lives as well. Every holy mystery involves a promise and involves a vow. Whether it is baptism, chrismation, or the Holy Eucharist, or the Holy Mystery of Reconciliation, or any of them, they involve a promise. And they are, at the same time, they become a fulfillment of a promise. Well, do we break them? Just by being us at the confession, it means that we did break a vow. We did break a promise. The promise of rejecting Satan and all the evil that comes along. But that is something that we have to really try to avoid. And it is a sin against the first commandment. Vow is a deliberate and free promise made to God concerning a possible and better good. That's a quotation from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And this is the promise that we should make, and we should try to stick to it. And if we break it, we have the mystery of reconciliation to cleanse us and to make another promise. Other promises, Christ says, St. Paul says, you better not make them. If it is yes, say yes. If it is no, say no, he says. So other promises, and we make a lot of different other promises throughout our life, but they don't have that ultimate value. And if we break them, if we don't stick to them, we are held not by God, but by our own consciences. And we have to come to Christ and to church to clean ourselves in the Holy Mystery of Reconciliation if we broke that. Another possible sin against the first commandment is the first commandment also holds us to social duty of religious freedom. We don't often think this about the first commandment, but also God made this commandment to everybody. And we have to recognize the right, human right, of everybody, not only Christians, but Muslims and Buddhists and whoever else, that they follow the same commandment, even though they represent God in a different way. So if we oppress any other religion, it is a sin against the first commandment. Not directly, we offend God because we think that we have the right to impose our religion on others. And this is something personal that we impose. We don't impose God. God has much better ways to impose himself through his intervention. What he said, what he told us to do is to go out in love and peace. And he says, when you enter a house, say, peace be to you. And he says, if they don't receive you, walk out. And it'll be between them and God. But we don't have any right to impose our religion on anybody. We can preach out of love. We can, what constitutes the missionary work is not destroying other religions, but is bringing the word of God to others. So if anybody is aggressive towards other religion or does not recognize the right to religious freedom, that becomes a sin against the first commandment. And on an opposite way, also the persecution of our faith is a sin against the first commandment. On a legal level, for instance, in so many countries, especially in Europe now, where euthanasia became a law, gay and lesbian marriages became a law, and especially in England, this has been over the news that some of Christian, not Catholic or Anglican adoption agencies, they were persecuted by law because they would not let gay marriages adopt children. Well, this is just one of the sides of persecution of our religion, and that is on their side. On the political side, it is a sin against the first commandment.